Well, it seems like Pierre Poilievre does not have a security clearance because that would infringe upon his right to work with his agents in covert operations. And agent number one? Who's agent number one? Well, it's called Danielle Smith in Alberta. We won't talk about chairman of the board. We're not talking Frank Sinatra, but Stephen Harper in the background. But let's start with Danielle Harper. Now, Moose on the Loose, here's another. The guy's fervent in his belief in the conservative cause, and he'll do whatever he can to manipulate and spread dis and misinformation in a way to try to convince you to hop on the conservative bandwagon. I have no hidden agenda here. I'm just looking for what's best for the country, my interest, what I think. You got to remember, this is an opinion piece here, and let's just stick with what we think will work best for our needs at the moment. And I said best, not the best overall, because nobody is the best overall. Everybody has pros and cons. And based on the economic situations, the threats south of the border, the affordability issues, we have to go on a growth-first strategy. But we do not need dissension from the East Coast to the West Coast, because we all need to work together. This is how you get through any crisis or any situation that involves radical change. And we need to get in a growth-first agenda. And a career politician's not going to do it. It ain't going to happen. Because if it would have happened, it would have happened back in the early 2000s under the Harper-Poilievre government, when they had a build-first agenda, lavish plan to build. But guess what? They failed to tell people that they weren't going to issue any funds to get it going. Yeah. The infrastructure investment on behalf of the government, more than half of it was just full of hot air. So let's deal with Danielle Smith here. Danielle Smith, because this is very, very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Posting this one here, Danielle Smith absolutely goes off on Mark Carney and the Liberals.
To the new Prime Minister and the Liberal Party, I have one message. Alberta has had enough. Enough with Ottawa trampling over our provincial jurisdiction like Canada's Constitution doesn't exist. Enough with the meaningless virtue signaling climate policies that only make Canadians poorer and threaten our energy security. Enough of their screw the West, we'll take the rest mentality. Enough with their soft on crime policies that let repeat offenders roam the streets on bail. Enough with their unsafe supply, their open border policies, their censorship laws. The list goes on and on.
Ooh, she went off. She went off. Danielle Smith, I stand with her all the way. By the way, I suggest all Canadians do not buy any Brookfield home or condo or tower. That is...
Do not buy. Yeah, but Dave, Moose on the Loose. This is Moose on the Loose here that's hosting this. And the host of Moose on the Loose is Dave. Dave, do you understand that Pierre Poilievre has a major holding in a Vanguard, an index fund that holds a minimum 50% of its holdings in Brookfield? Do you understand that Pierre Poilievre has an interest in Brookfield? Nobody talks about it. Just say it ain't so. Yes, it is, Dave. It is so. But you know what else is interesting here, folks? This Alberta thing didn't just happen overnight. It's been going on for a long, long time. And you got to remember, back in 2014, there was an oil crisis. Prices dropped. Alberta needed help. The government was there to help Alberta. And nobody gets that. Nobody understands that whatsoever, or nobody seems to care about it. So, what's going on here? Now let's look at Coots. Let's go back to COVID-19. Like, you keep hearing about this lost decade. 2015, November, Trudeau got elected. 2016, got a cabinet together. He's got to bail out a recession that happened under the watch of Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre. For a long time prior to that, Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin had created surpluses. But for the decade that Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre were in power, they racked up the greatest deficit in Canadian political history. That's it. And then they passed it over to Justin Trudeau. Young guy, 2015, November election, he won. 2016, he started putting his cabinet together. And then December 2019, we had COVID, the worst pandemic in 100 years. But let's circle back to Daniel Smith. And you have to understand, Stephen Harper, as at December 2024, is running the Alberta Pension Fund now. They've been talking about yanking their money out of the Canada Pension Plan. Like, these guys are just way off base. And I'll tell you what is going on here. If you go back to the Coots, this goes back to COVID-19. You got to understand, National Post, a lot of these, it's owned by a hedge fund, American hedge fund, conservative slant. It finances conservative rhetoric, far right-wing policy. It owns the Toronto Sun, and at one time it owned the Regs. They were buying off porn stars, or maybe not porn stars, Playboy bunnies, and other information that might affect Donald Trump in his candidacy for president. So, Post Media is owned by an American hedge fund. They're working on their agenda. The truckers' convoy in Ottawa, 50% financed by American interests, American billionaire from Chicago, other American interests. So Pierre Poilievre was pushing it also. He is behind the convoy. So there's a lot more going on than what you realize. What you see is not what always is. There's things going on behind the scenes that you're not aware of. Now, over in Coots, was it Coots? What was it called? Coots? Anyways, Montana and Alberta. You also had another blockade. And you got to understand what they're thinking. They've been feeding on this for many, many decades. Alberta has not had it all that bad comparative to maybe the East Coast. Everybody has their ups and downs. It's not perfect. But we try to, Canada's tried to balance it. You don't get it perfect. But to think that Alberta is the lost child of the country, of the world, is a result of a lot of rhetoric, a lot of platitudes, a lot of slogans that have been rammed down Albertans' throats day in, day out, to create this division. And it's just really that simple. So here's one of the guys that's part of the convoy blockade between Alberta and Manitoba. Or Montana, sorry. And one of the guys that, guys got, you wouldn't believe the arms stash these guys had. So this one guy, Carbert, tried to convince his mother, "Mom, I won't be home until laws are passed and the government is toppled," he told her. "I thought maybe you would go home for a couple days," she replied. He responded, "I don't think you truly understand what this is for and about. If we lose here, I will likely die in war." And this is what these people are thinking in Alberta. Poilievre, another one that's in concert with Carbert, made some important arrangements for important things in his life. "If I die," he stated, "feed my cat and take my guns." What is this for people and friggin' guns? You ever heard of a supermarket? Like, come on. He texted a friend that, "If I die, feed my cat and take my guns." He further texted to a friend, "Hopefully civil war doesn't start." Like, come on now. Nobody heard of civility? Nobody heard of conversation and dealing in good faith to try to come to terms? But to say it's just one-sided, I gotta tell you, most of the streets in Canada are two-way streets. Some days you may feel like you're not getting a fair shake, but that happens to everybody. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. And I'm ready for the worst-case scenario, this guy said. But anyways, they found with arms caches. There they are. with their trucks, nationalistic pride. Nationalistic pride, got to be very, very careful there. Here, 2-year anniversary, they're still friggin' beating the drum. But look at the cache of arms the RCMP seized. Like, friggin' assault-style rifles. Like, come on now. This is really necessary. And here's other pictures of the blockade at that time. So, this is what you got going on. Nobody thinks twice about it. Everybody wants to play the blame game. And then the politicians are feeding on these slogans and platitudes. Misinformation, because it's only maybe half factual, sometimes less, to lead you in a different direction. So here's some of the headlines. Man convicted. But, they didn't get convicted for trying to murder the freaking RCMP guys. But that's what you got. So here you go. Now, how deep is this Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, and Stephen Harper thing? You got to remember, Pierre Poilievre was in Edmonton recently, brought there for a rally that was created by Stephen Harper to promote Pierre Poilievre. And let's look at the members here. Taking a little time to load up. Okay, this is conservatives in waiting and in power around the world. Now let's go to the leadership here. Taking a little time to load up. Here's the chairman. The Right Honorable Stephen Harper. Like, you've seen the map. You've seen the tentacles of the Conservative Party around the world. Stephen Harper, actually, if you go back, he's Wild Rose Party. That's where Danielle Smith came from. Then, they had Reform Party, Preston Manning. Got to understand, Preston Manning made a statement recently to actually secession of Alberta. Like, come on now. You want a succession? You want to split? Why don't you just leave the land where it is? And if you're not happy, go somewhere else. Just the people can move somewhere else on their own. They don't own the land. And if you really want to be technical, Canada really never owned the land either. The indigenous people were the original inhabitants of the land, and Mother Earth owns the land. We've created all the rest. We've created those constructs. But, so you've got Croatia, United Kingdom, Australia. Stephen Harper's he's the big cheese, the chairman. Not a chair. A position of a chair like Mark Carney was with Brookfield is a different fiduciary capacity. This is chairman of the board, which is different capacity on a fiduciary level as well. More hands-on in a different way. So we just scroll down. They're all over the place. Actually, I believe ORBAN's a member of this group too, but I'm not sure if his picture's here. It might be, might not be. But here's the funny thing here. Republican Party USA, the treasurer of this group. And what was Danielle Smith doing? She's down there in the United States, Mar-a-Lago, with Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, Jordan B. Peterson, and Donald J. Trump. And it's a fact, kids. We're just dealing with facts. So for anybody to think that slogans and platitudes are unique to Donald Trump, pay attention. Because that's the way Stephen Harper ran his government, and that's the way Pierre Poilievre has dealt with his debates in the Commons. He thinks he's a prosecutor. Really has not been nice on the floor of the Commons. He's created a lot of division. He taunts everybody. And he spreads a lot of misinformation. So I'm going to bring you to a guy by the name of Bill Kelly. The Bill Kelly Podcast. We're just going to take a part of this.
Because what Harper has done and what he did last night and what Poilievre has been doing during this campaign is basically very much along the lines of what extreme right-wing governments or wannabe governments are doing these days. And it's all the brainchild of a gentleman by the name of Arthur Finkelstein, who is an American right-wing pollster that's been around for quite some time. He's considered by many to be, well, should we say, the father of extreme right-wing political theories and politicking. And basically the theme that Finkelstein has developed, that other governments and other political leaders, including Donald Trump, by the way, have used and used effectively, sadly, is basically you don't need to develop any policies. You don't have to have any hard and fast answers to what needs to be done to a country. All you need to do is, well, two things. First of all, find out what people are pissed off about. Is it the economy? Is it inflation? Is it housing? Is it immigration? Is it those people of different colors that are taking our jobs? You find what that is. Those are the hot points, and you basically turn around, which is part two, blame the government, or blame your enemy, blame the other opposition government for all the problems. Immigration is their fault. Housing is their fault. Inflation is their fault. And it's just this guy. Even though, for instance, over the last number of years, we've had a global economic crisis. It wasn't just in Canada. But Poilievre wants to paint that, oh, it's only here and it's only Justin Trudeau that caused it. Everything that's wrong with the world, everything that's wrong with your life was caused by Justin Trudeau. And when people are angry, they don't think logically. They're angry, and they're looking for a place to try to channel that anger, and they fall into that gap. And Harper used that to get elected, of course, in the first place back in 2006. And certainly he's followed through, and his protege, Poilievre, seems to be doing the same sort of thing. And it's all because of this Finkelstein attitude, which, by the way, Finkelstein is no stranger to Stephen Harper. He had been around Canada. He'd been with the National Citizens Coalition, worked for them. He's an American, but he came up here and worked for the National Citizens Coalition, which, by the way, Harper was a member of before he got into politics. We're told that he helped Harper actually get elected as an MP back in the early 1990s, and that was using those sorts of tactics, of course. And subsequently, of course, Harper learned at his knee about how to actually run political campaigns. And Poilievre, of course, has taken the lead to try to do the same sort of thing. Harper these days, let's bring you up to speed on that for those who maybe don't follow the Canadian political scene or the international political scene to the extent that some people do, like political geeks like myself and some of my colleagues. Harper is the head of an organization called the International Democracy Union. I always find it interesting that people that seem to hold extreme views on things love to use words like democracy and fairness in the title of their organizations, when in fact the way those organizations are actually manipulated.
Yeah, I just showed you the webpage where Harper is the chairman of the board. The treasurer is a Republican in the USA. And this is what Bill Kelly is referring to here.
Manipulating people is quite the opposite of democracy, etc. His organization, the International Democracy Union, by the way, one of their shining stars is Viktor Orban, who is the Hungarian prime minister, who considers Stephen Harper, quote, a great ally in the work that Orban is doing in Hungary, which, by the way, is basically eroding all of the democratic guardrails in Hungary, basically changing the way elections are being run, controlling the appointment of judges, and basically turning this into almost the same sort of government that we see with Putin, the same sort of government we see with Kim Jong-il. These are what the extreme right-wing politicians and oligarchs that try to gain office are doing on a regular basis. And Harper's the guy that runs the organization that promotes this sort of activity. That's what.
And further to that, you just gotta remember, with just a few days ago, a lot of business leaders, former bank, high-ranking bank members, Prem Watsa, financial, also all conservative, went on the record supporting the Conservative Party. So you got to understand, Mark Carney is being painted as being one of the elitists, but what's happened here and what you need to understand, the Conservatives, historically, and you've just seen it with the people that endorse, the business leaders of past that endorsed Pierre Poilievre just recently, are the elitists. And this is where the real con is happening. Conservative Party are beholden to the elitists. That's why the tax cuts and the free markets and the deregulations in place. You just have not connected the dots.
where this guy's head is at and has been for quite some time. So let's keep that in mind. Another one of Harper's good buddies, of course, is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And we already know, of course, about their association. And we also know from CSIS and other intelligence agencies here that the Indian government has tried successfully to infiltrate and to influence Canadian politics. We know that there's hard evidence right now that the Indian government supported Pierre Poilievre and tried to influence the Conservative leadership race. Now we're finding out that, of course, the Indian government is involved still in disinformation campaigns here in Canadian politics. The fact that Modi and Harper are buddies, the fact that Poilievre is a protege of Harper's, you got to wonder.
And they've created misinformation boiler rooms in Bangladesh to manipulate as well.
Where their mindset is. So, are we being inundated and being influenced by the, well, first of all, we know the Indian government because that proof is there. We also know, as of this week, that the Chinese government is doing a number of misinformation campaigns as well. So we've got to be cognizant of just who the players are here and what they're trying to do and how they're influencing us. And maybe not you and me, but people around us that are going to be influenced by this. When you're angry and you're pissed off at something, it's pretty easy to take, yeah, that's right, it's that person's fault, and direct their anger toward them. Logic doesn't seem to play a part in an awful lot of that, and they count on that. They bank on the fact that most Canadians or Americans, wherever they're going to try to infiltrate the system, are going to feel the same way. This game plan that we just talked about make people angry and then channel their anger towards the opposition, is the same game plan, of course, that Donald Trump has used very effectively.
And that's correct. And this is where people are falling into the exact same trap. Donald Trump promised tax cuts, change everything. And look at what's happening. You got people corralled off the streets and sent to jails in El Salvador. You got manipulation of stock markets so that people can, in power, in the government, so that they can invest and short stocks and profit off it big time. And you just look at it and you just buy into the rhetoric, the slogans, and the platitudes because it touches a button and makes you feel warm and fuzzy, but it does nothing for you. So you're going to make the same mistake as what the Americans have done with Donald Trump? The deep state. It turns out the deep state wasn't as deep as everybody thought. They really needed that to help run the country. You ever stop to think about that? Holy moly. Maybe not. So we're going to leave this video at this juncture. Now, understand, do you want pain and suffering? Or do you want a loving, harmonious, and abundant life? Like, you can make that choice. Why you want to inflict pain and suffering on others, why you want to create an environment that creates pain and suffering for others is beyond my comprehension, because all you have to do is pivot in the other direction and create an environment that's loving, uplifting, and creates abundance for everybody to live in a harmonious manner. And it just is a matter of making that decision, making that change, and actually living that change. That's all it is. So if you think tax cuts, free markets and deregulation, which has caused rental property prices to be out of control, and other factors, the fact that the government itself stopped building houses in 1972, then take that route. But if you want to actually make a change to create an affordability crisis and change it, it requires the government itself building homes like it did after the Second World War. But Carney's not perfect. But he's not been a politician all his life. The Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre government failed in the implementation of any Build Canada model they created. Carney has experience in doing it. Jim Flaherty was the finance minister under Stephen Harper. He wasn't all that great of a finance minister. He functioned in that role with Mike Harris in 1995 in Ontario. The health system in Ontario has not recovered from the cudgel of Mike Harris. So you need to make your decision. You need to do critical thinking and find out what is really going on, what serves the people, in a loving, positive manner, or you take the route of more pain and suffering. It's just as simple as that. So, we're going to cut out, sending love and peace to everyone. Stay safe. And when anxiety's got a hold of you, just sleep on it. Just take a few deep breaths. Don't overreact. Don't overthink. Sleep on it. Next morning, you'll think much clearer. So that's where we're at. Take care. And once again, love and peace to everybody.